It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the 6 films of April 4th, 2008. We have a wide assortment of movies here. We have a family adventure film with Jodie Foster and Gerard Butler and Abigail Breslin. We have a screwball comedy from George Clooney, also starring him and John Krasinski and Renee Zellweger. We have a horror film produced by Ben Stiller, and a couple of indie films that you may not be familiar with, but some of them are actually pretty good. And Martin Scorsese directs another Rolling Stones movie. This time it's Shine a Light. But we'll take a look at those in just a little bit here. But let's get to the big new release of the weekend, and that is the family adventure film, Nim's Island. Slightly better than Argyle, but pretty much the same plot as Argyle. You have a story about a young girl played by Abigail Breslin who's alone on a remote island seeking help from an agoraphobic San Franciscan author played by Jodie Foster. When the author attempts to overcome her agoraphobia to search for her, Nim is trying to overcome her fear of losing her father, played by Gerard Butler. And her creation, Alex Rover, is also somebody who happens to be played by Gerard Butler, so you think maybe that's going to tie into something, but not really. I mean, you could kind of figure it out right away with what they're going to do with it in the end. And yeah, it goes pretty much kind of where you expect it to go. But really, in the end, it doesn't amount to anything in terms of the story overall. And the story itself really isn't that engaging or interesting whatsoever. It's a pretty bland story overall. It's a movie where everyone's trying their best to do something in here, but nobody's really giving it 110%. Like, Jodie Foster usually will never turn in a bad performance in a bad movie. This is probably one of her worst things she's ever done, but even then, she's completely harmless in here. She doesn't do anything that terrible. And again, this is one of those movies where they were really trying to push Abigail Breslin as the next big movie star, and it just really wasn't meant to be. And this is another one of those movies where Gerard Butler's coming off of 300. Again, another person they were trying to really push as the next big thing, and it just never really took off for him after 300. But yeah, just a lot of things in here that should make for an enjoyable adventure film. And I guess for little kids, it's fine, but there's just so many better options out there for kids besides something like this. I think you can get much more enjoyment out of much better family adventure films, like, of course, Swiss Family Robinson comes to mind. There's a bunch of other ones I can easily mention here, but this one is just, it's just kind of mediocre overall. It's nothing too amazing, nothing too spectacular, but it's nothing terrible either. It's just very run-of-the-mill, something you put on a Saturday afternoon when there's literally nothing else going on and it's raining or snowing outside. That's about it, so yeah, mediocre opinion on Nim's Island. So, with all that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next one we have here, and that is Leatherheads. So the idea of Leatherheads is that this is a romantic comedy set against the backdrop of America's nascent pro football league in 1925. We have Dodge Connolly, played by George Clooney, who's a charming, brash football hero, determined to guide his team from bar brawls to packed stadiums. But after the players lose their sponsorship and the entire league faces certain collapse, Dodge convinces a college football star to join his ragtag ranks. The captain hopes his latest move will help the struggling sport finally capture the country's attention. Welcome to the team, Carter Rutherford, played by John Krasinski, a Golden Boy war hero who single-handedly forced multiple German soldiers to surrender in the Great War. Carter has dashing good looks and unparalleled speed on the field. The new champ is almost too good to be true, and Lexi Littleton, played by Renee Zellweger, aims to prove that that's the case. She's a Cub journalist playing in the big leagues. She's a Spitfire newswoman who suspects there are holes to Carter's war story, but while she digs, the two teammates start to become serious off-field rivals for her fickle affections. As the new game of pro football becomes less like the freewheeling sport he knew and loved, Dodge must find his guys to keep them together and to get the goal of his dreams. Finding that love and football has a surprisingly similar playbook, however, he has one maneuver he will save just for the fourth quarter. I did not write that in any means necessary. I think that was written by the studio or something, but this is a movie that didn't do very well with critics when it came out. It was actually kind of seen as an underwhelming film, and I think it actually kind of bombed at the box office, but I really dug the hell out of this movie, man. It's George Clooney's directorial follow-up to Good Night and Good Luck, which I think is a much superior film, but this is a film I really think got severely overlooked because it is really a funny movie. George Clooney doing something in the spirit of an old 1920s screwball comedy. I mean, this is right in his MO. This is something that he is known for. He is well aware that he can make work, and he makes this work so well. I think it's a very entertaining movie, and it really gives a chance for John Krasinski to really show how good of an actor he can really be, because he has to be in scenes with these two Oscar-winning actors in here. Not just George Clooney, but Renee Zellweger. Like, he has to really stick with these guys to really keep the audience invested in what's going on. He does a great job at it. I mean, he's absolutely pitch perfect in here. He fits the role very well here. It's a really fun film. Great music by Randy Newman, some great cinematography. I mean, it really does a good job of making you feel like this is something that could have taken place in the 20s overall. I think it's a much fun, it could be easily seen as a much funnier version of something like Semi-Pro, but that really isn't saying a whole lot because Semi-Pro, I think, is a much different animal than something like Leatherheads is, obviously, but this is a really good movie. I really enjoy it a lot. I think it's a very underrated film and one that should definitely be checked out. So definitely check out Leatherheads. With that said, let us move on to the next movie we have here, and that is The Ruins. Yeah, another one of those horror movies they were hoping to branch out big time, with Ben Stiller being one of the main producers on the film, but unfortunately, it kind of falls into the similar territory we've seen with many films like this before. You follow a pair of couples who are on a vacation in Mexico who join a tourist to visit a remote Mayan ruin that unfortunately is inhabited by a carnivorous vine growth. And there's good ideas in here. This is based off of a book of the same name, but it really just falls into predictable territory we've seen done to death before so many times. I mean, other movies have done this so much better, but this wants to be something new and unique, something like The Descent, but it's more like the ripoff of The Descent, The Cave, more than it is The Descent. I mean, it's one of those movies where you have basically stupid white people going into a place that they should not be going into, but screw it, they're going to do it anyway because the Mountain Dew's kicking in. They feel like they can do whatever they want, and then they get their comeuppance in the end, and it just really doesn't work overall. The scares really aren't that interesting. There's way too much gore in the movie, which keep in mind, this is the Saw and Hostel era, and everybody thought that, excessive gore was the way to go, and no, not really. And this really stumbled to get out of the gate pretty quickly, and it just really didn't do anything to distance itself from much better movies that this is trying to be, and it really failed on so many levels. It wasn't entertaining. You don't like the characters whatsoever. You're only there watching them to see them get killed in a matter of moments. Just nothing there, man. Just nothing worthy of this movie. A hard skip on The Ruins. So with that said, let us go ahead and move on to the next film we have here. The Martin Scorsese directed Rolling Stones documentary, Shine a Light. Okay, I said that this was actually the second Martin Scorsese directed Rolling Stone documentary. There was another Rolling Stone documentary called Let's Spend the Night Together, but that was not directed by Scorsese. That was directed by Hal Ashby back in 1983, so I apologize for that, but this is directed by Scorsese, and as you can see, it features archival footage from the band's career making use of digital cinematography for backstage sequences, the first time Scorsese uses that technology in a film, and it's basically a film to tie into the Rolling Stones' latest album at the time, Shine a Light. And, I mean, it is what it is, man. It's a documentary where you get to see the Rolling Stones and Martin Scorsese work off of each other. You get some performances by Christina Aguilera and Jack White in there, too. And it really just depends on if you like to see the Rolling Stones doing what they do best. And sure enough, they are the Rolling Stones do what they do best in this movie, and it works very well. It's a very fun documentary. You get to hear some really good music all across the board, and you get to see Martin Scorsese do some things that he's never really done before in a movie like this. Like I said, using digital cinematography, which is something that was very unprecedented and new for him in this case, and it works very well here. Notable that this is also the last film by Paramount Classics, as the studio had merged it with Paramount Vantage, which didn't last very long after this movie did. So, I mean, you have a studio that was around for almost 10 years, and now it's been truncated down, and now that studio's gone, and Paramount's just been releasing films under Paramount Pictures overall. So, but other than that, though, not much more to say about Shine a Light. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to some indie comedies. Some of them you might not be familiar with. In fact, I know one you're not going to be familiar with. This is this next one here. Aaron Eckhart, Jessica Alba, and Elizabeth Banks in the comedy Meet Bill. So in the movie, Aaron Eckhart plays Bill, who's unhappy. He's married a banker's daughter and has a dead-end job at the bank. And his wife Jess, played by Elizabeth Banks, is tied to Daddy's wallet. And Bill is developing a gut for lack of exercise and constantly eats candy bars. He dreams of buying a donut franchise to be independent of Jess's dad, and he's roped into a mentoring program in his old prep school, assigned a smart-mouthed kid who pops up when least expected. And when Jess starts an affair with Chip, played by Tim Oliphant, who's a local TV personality and a vain Rob Lowe lookalike, which... I don't know. I don't really see a difference between Rob Lowe and Timothy Olyphant, especially in 2008 of all times. But it sends Bill, the kid, and a young sales clerk from a lingerie shop, played by Jessica Alba, on a quest to win back Jess and get the donuts. What about self-respect? What about a plot that actually makes sense? Because none of that makes any fucking sense whatsoever. And it's kind of the problem with the film in general. I think it's a film that really doesn't work because it's just all over the place. Nothing really is going on here, and it just feels like this is a film that's trying to be way too many things at the same time. Does it want to be a comedy? Does it want to be a drama? It can't balance it out overall. And it's a shame because there are things about the film I did kind of enjoy. I liked Aaron Eckhart in here. I thought he was pretty good. Elizabeth Banks was pretty good playing his wife. Logan Lerman, Percy Jackson is pretty good in here playing the kid. Tim Oliphant's pretty fun in here. Jessica Alba, I think, is actually in probably one of her better films overall, but they're just stuck with a really bad script that really doesn't go anywhere, and it just really kind of falls apart pretty quickly, and there's nothing really to say about the film because nothing really else more to say about it because nothing really happens in this movie. Like, what am I even doing here? Like, what's the point of being here except to just watch this guy who's just kind of a bland character overall, played very well by a good actor, but he's not really given anything to do or anything to make him stand out or anything like that. It's like the film had an idea, but just couldn't figure out how to materialize it into a story that makes it something that deserves to be seen. It's just a film that feels like it's all over the place, has nowhere to go, and it just feels kind of lost in the end. It really has nothing of value to give people. And it's a shame because the actors are trying their best, but there's just nothing there to give it that extra spark that it really needs to really become something unique and different. And yeah, it just kind of falls apart pretty quickly. So yeah, not much more to say about that one except meet Bill. Some parts of it are good, but others not so much. So let's go ahead and move on to the last one we have here. Easily the most memorable of the two indie comedies we have this week, and that's Daniel Waters' follow-up to Heathers, and that is Sex and Death 101. So in the story, this guy's about to marry this woman played by Julie Bowen. Roderick Blank is his name, played by Simon Baker. He receives an anonymous email with 101 names on it. Fiona is the 29th. The first 28 are women that Rod has slept with, and the 30th turns out to be the stripper at his bachelor party. The notion that he will have sex with 70 more people sends Rod into crisis mode, especially after three odd men in an aesthetic office confirm that a celestial machine has made an error. They suggest destroying the list, but Rod finds it easier said than done. Working his way through it, it consumes him, plus he realizes that death may await him after 101. Meanwhile, a femme fatale nicknamed Death Nell, played by Winona Ryder, is putting men into a coma. Are they fated to meet? And you can kind of see where the film ends up going in the end, but this is what I actually really enjoy. I like the concept of this movie. This is like the Good Luck Chuck. Like, Good Luck Chuck had a really good premise to work with, this guy has sex with all these women, and then immediately they find their true love. The problem was there wasn't a good script to go behind it, and the film ended up being terrible. This is a really good idea to it. A guy that has this list of all the women that he's had sex with, he's going to have sex with, and it ends at this 101, and you're thinking, what's going to happen at 101? And the first time you watch it, you really don't notice it early on. And it took me a second time after watching this again to realize to realize how you can kind of figure out where it's going to go early on. And it kind of ruins it a little bit, but honestly, I really like this movie a lot. I thought it was actually really funny. Simon Baker, of course, everyone knows him as The Mentalist. It's a chance for him to do something that's very, very much more comedic and much more funnier and much more clever than something that he would usually do as being like in a procedural drama. And I think he does it very well here. Winona Ryder is great in this movie. I love her performance as Nell in this. She's really fun. I mean, she looks like she's really going in on this, and it just shows how great of an actress she can really be. You got a lot of other great performances in here. Leslie Bibb, Retta from Parks and Recreation, Patton Oswalt, just a number of different names in here. The aforementioned Julie Bowen, Neil Flynn from Scrubs, Frances Fisher, just a lot of notable names in this movie, and a lot of really good fun concepts all across the board here. It's a really fun movie, a really good idea overall. This is a film that really does take the advantages of what Good Luck Chuck was supposed to do, but failed to do, and makes it work here, because I think there's a much better director involved in this, a much better writer, who has a really good idea of what he wants to do, what kind of a story he wants to tell. I think it works very well. I think it's a very underrated film and one that should definitely be checked out. If you haven't seen Sex and Death 101, definitely check it out, especially if you love Heathers. This one's a really good black comedy that definitely deserves a lot more attention. So with all that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies, and the next time we meet, we'll take a look at 4 more movies, including the remake of Prom Night, David Ayers' second film after Harsh Times, Street Kings, featuring Keanu Reeves and Forest Whitaker. We have Ellen Page, Sarah Jessica Parker, starring in a comedy, Smart People, and we also have Richard Jenkins in his Academy Award-nominated performance in The Visitor. So we'll take a look at those 4 movies coming up on tomorrow's show. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please go ahead and hit the plays on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, notification button, and the bell, because that's when you get updates on when new videos come out, and we do post new videos here every day. And don't go too far away, because coming up on Time About the Movies Flashback, we're flashing back to July 10th, 1987, with 5 movies to look at, including Revenge of the Nerds 2, Nerds in Paradise, the Michael Keaton film The Squeeze, Whitewater Summer, The Whistleblower, and O.C. and Stig. So we'll take a look at those on Time About the Movies Flashback. That's coming up right after I post this up, so please stick around, because we will be right back.